Backyard Professor Chess videos. Game number 2 of the Ruy Lopez. This is again from my friend Paul Powell, the chess master who is helping us become chess masters. It's a very nice newsletter that he puts out online. You ought to look him up. He's got 3 Kindle books out on chess, and his commentary on the games is just so down to... He does some good analysis, but it's not so deep and heavy that you lose, your eyes glaze over and you say, I can't think 99 moves ahead, man. Paul kind of explains it in everyday terms, and I love his books for that. This is out of his book 60 More Memorable Games of Bobby Fischer. Hey, the nice thing about the Kindle books, 2 of Powell's books are only 99 cents, man. You can't beat the price. You get several wonderful games with his explanation as a chess master of what they're doing. And this one, I think, is only $4.99. You get 60 more Bobby Fischer games. This is a classic Bobby Fischer game. Bobby's playing white. Unzicker was one of the strongest German grandmaster. This guy had won the German championship 6 times, and he had been on 12 chess Olympiads. So this is no backyard Professor Fischer is playing. This is a real chess player. And Fischer just really plays a wonderful game. Unzicker plays a very excellent game in the Ruy Lopez's black, and I'll show you some of this game really shows us some of the very interesting intricacies, potential traps that white can fall into if you fall under black's mesmerizing gaze, but Fischer avoids that. Now we can see this is a typical, really truly, an excellent Ruy Lopez opening. Fischer dodges his bishop back down, of course. Unzicker does the correct thing, bring the... this has been around for 500 years, right? The Ruy Lopez. And through 500 years of play, it has really been ironed out. Probably, there are numerous variations. But for the first 9 or 10 moves, you really ought to stick with the book if you're going to do a book Ruy Lopez, because you can get in trouble. In fact, I just played a game last night on chess.com where my opponent played a Ruy Lopez and muffed it on one of the variations, and I was able to very nicely take care of business. I'll show you that one later after I get through these really good games with the grandmasters. Now Fischer, notice, boy, that is so typical Ruy. Move the rook over. What this will enable us to do, he's going to push this pawn eventually, I think, is going to enable him to bring that knight over onto the king side. That is so typical of the Ruy Lopez. That's a wonderful option. And now Unzicker, he wants to castle, but he's going to make sure the bishop is completely out of the way first. And that's pretty important. So the bishop goes down, and now he's going to support, again, he's going to support that king pawn. Excellent, nice, developing, quiet move. Fischer's going to press the c3. We'll see this an awful lot, so that he can drop that bishop down once the knight on the queen side comes over. This is really important. Unzicker now can castle with safety. This h3 push, what this move is doing, notice this long diagonal with the bishop. The bishop can come into here. This prevents that, right? So that his king side doesn't get beat up and broke up with the pawns. It prevents the knight from coming here to g4. It prevents the queen and the bishop more or less. So this is a good move. There are some commentators who don't like it at all. But if Fischer and Tal can do it, then so can we, right? And here we go. A typical theme in the Ruy Lopez, that dark, the queen side knight, putting the challenge to the bishop, and of course, the bishop's going to drop down. They like to keep their 2 bishops. How Bobby plays his 2 bishops in this game is going to take your breath away. It's beautiful how he does this. And Unzicker is doing it right. He pulls up that c5 pawn. Now this is critically important because this will give him queenside space. It will allow him to manipulate and coordinate his pieces with his pawns, which is always important. And then Fischer plays the Chigorin attack. This, when black pulls the c-pawn up, that's the call for the d-pawn to go to 4, and now you're challenging the center. Now, there's tension in the center right now, isn't there? You're saying, ooh, yeah, which pawn do I take that pawn with? That's not how these guys are thinking. And no sooner than I say that, than he goes ahead and refutes me and says, I'm going to take the d4 pawn anyway. See, shows you how much I know, right? In this instance, he does take the pawn. And he responds by taking the pawn. So there has been some tension released after all. There's many games. I think the games of Tal show you that they don't release the tension immediately. Oh, what Unzicker does here is really good. He, a lot of times they'll bring the bishop up here to e6, which is entirely good. Now Unzicker is putting it over here on b7 and grabbing this long diagonal, slicing the board right in half. This can play into the game extremely well. White has to kind of keep on his toes with this. Now, of course, he's going to bring the knight to the d2. And the board, the position doesn't dictate to Unzicker to go for a full side queen attack yet. Not yet. So he's going to dodge his knight back here to c6. And, of course, c6 hits up into here, into d4, and then he's got some support here in the queen side. And you've got this this knight hitting here and here, so that's a pretty good move. But they're not. He's not ready for the queen side yet. Now, and Bobby did this a lot in his games with several other openings too. He sees a chance to seize the initiative. That is, he gets to call the shots now. And how he does that is he continues pressing that pawn to d5, putting the knight to the question. What this also does, well, let me do Unzicker's move. Unzicker comes here even further into queenside territory, but this also limits this knight and his influence. It also limits that powerful fianchettoed bishop. Now he really doesn't have much of a diagonal. So pushing that pawn was a very strong offensive / defensive move all at once. That's really nice to see that, isn't it? Now, Bobby doesn't want to lose his bishop. So he's willing to drop it down to b1, and you think, wow, look at that. Unzicker has completely demoted Bobby Fischer down to the degrading square b1. Don't kid yourself. He's just biding his time. Just watch. Bobby Fischer was master with bishops, as we all know. Now here comes Unzicker. You notice he's pressing on the queen side. He's going to put a little pressure. Very nice. And Bobby is doing the typical Ruy Lopez knight dance. The knight is going to come up into here. He's either going to come to e3 or g3. He could come to h2 and then up to 4. But usually when they bring that knight move over to the f1, they'll be coming into e3, which gives him central support here. It also supports the f5 for a pawn push. We'll see what he does. But that is always a really strong Ruy Lopez move. And now Unzicker drops his knight back. Now, and, you know, this is great Grandmaster chess, because by dropping your pieces back, you don't want to lead the wing attack with your pieces if you can help it. Push the pawns through, right? Use them as the battering rams and back them up with pieces. That's a good way to do the chess. Well, Bobby chooses to go to the g3 with his knight. So we've seen a move, a move, and a move. Now he's getting poised for a king side, right? You can see that. Bishop drops back down to c8. Interesting, this diagonal wasn't doing him any good at all. It just wasn't. So reposition your bishop. Well, yeah, that's a good thing to do, right? Unzicker is a very strong German grandmaster. And now, Bobby properly, you'll see White do this again and again and again, these games I found to illustrate for you. Bishop to d3, develop that central bishop, absolutely. And now bishop comes up to d7. So Unzicker has also centralized his bishops. A stronger place. And now, you remember that bishop being denigrated down to b1, not for very long, because now we come up to d3. Well, he's trying to prevent the queenside play, of course. And now look what Unzicker does. queen b8. So we can see, we can absolutely see where these guys are starting to focus, can't we? Fischer is going to want to swing around here to the king side, and Unzicker, now Unzicker hasn't just abandoned his king side either now. He's got some pretty good power here, and pretty good support with his pieces, but he can go either direction. He can go on the queen side with his bishops and knight, but you can see that the majority of power is coming on the queen side. So both players have to kind of watch out, because they're both very, very good. Bobby comes over to rook c1, open file, but of course, that's how they do it. Absolutely. Now the bishop drops to d8. And you're asking, what is going on? Here's what Unzicker is thinking. And it's an excellent idea. His bishop on d8 is the bad bishop. His central pawns are the same dark square, right? So sitting on d8, he just can't do a lot. Wouldn't it be better to trade off your bad bishop, your inactive bishop, for Fischer's very powerful active bishop? Yes, that is a great plan. That's a good idea. Why not? It will also help support the c5 square, because Fischer's bishop here is just taking away c5. c5 would be a nice square for that knight, and then put a rook on there. That's a good basis for a queenside play to win, right? But you're not going to be able to get c5 if Fischer has this bishop, so use your less powerful piece and trade it for the more powerful piece. Yes, that's good chess thinking. And that's what Unzicker is on. Now watch how Bobby refutes this. This is so fun how he does this. First he comes to queen e2, and now the queen comes to b7. Pressure on the center has not been released yet, not even. And neither one of them are given an inch. They're going to keep it just as tight and solid as they can, right? Now this is interesting. Oh, well, not that one. Knight h2. Wow. What a move. Yeah, see on f3, yeah, he's probably thinking of pushing this pawn. That's what he's going to do. He's going to come into the king side, and typical of attacks, you push the pawn and put the pieces supporting the pawns behind it. That's what he's going to do. He's going to break out that king side. And now, here we go. Knight b4. Now, Bobby is manipulating and preparing to go to the king side. Unzicker is not just sitting there waiting for him defensively. Not by a long shot. Let's go to a queen side. Let's see who gets to the other one first. Counter attack. That's good chess. That is seriously good chess. And Bobby comes back down here to the b1. He does not, you know, he's putting the question to the bishop. The bishops, the centralized bishops are so strong that you have to attack them, and he drops it back down. He's not going to exchange his bishops, though. Isn't that interesting? It's a closed position. Conventional wisdom says with a closed position, your knights are going to be stronger, so swap your bishops. Bobby keeps his bishops. Well, that's because he was so blasted good. So here again, we see another really excellent strategy. Now, bishop to b6. Unzicker brings his dark square bishop out. He's directly challenging Bobby's bishop here, because that's so strong, and this is Unzicker's weak bishop. So he says, okay, let's swap the bishops. Bobby says, well, before I swap, let me come up here to g5. Boy, now that's getting dangerous. You got your bishop up here. You're going to take away a defender of the king side. This defender is in the way of the queen to get over to the king side. You've got a knight here that can jump up here real fast, or up here real fast. And you've got a queen coming over here. That's a powerful move. Unzicker's going to have to say, ooh, wait a minute. So you got to come back down to d8. You just have to, because you can't let this knight just fall for nothing. You can't let the knight fall and have the pawn retake it either, because you're going to mess up the kingside pawns, and the rest of this stuff is just going to zip over here quick. So Unzicker says, well, okay, hold on. I will react to what Bobby is doing. Bobby says, you're darn right you're going to react to what I'm doing, because here I come. Queen F3. Now it's starting to get tense. Fischer is ratcheting it up. Now, remember, Unzicker has the bad bishop. Well, there's no reason to leave the knight in the way. Drop him back out and let's swap those bishops. This is Bobby Fischer's power piece. Unzicker would love to get rid of that bishop. He's cramped anyway. He wants to get some more open space. Bobby says, no, I don't want to swap the bishop. I'm going to come back down here to E3. It's really funny how Bobby is avoiding the exchange, huh? I mean, he has more space. There's no reason to give Unzicker some good space at all, right? Well, Unzicker says, no, come on, Bob. Let's swap these bishops. Give me that doggone bishop, dang ya. And Bobby says, nope, I'm not going to do it. Bishop B2, or D2, I mean. And this gives good pressure against that knight, although Bobby's not going to do anything about that. Well, the bishops have now come back into here, so you got to bring your defender back up to here, to the king side. It's important to keep that strong. And now, knight comes up to G4. Here come the knights. Now you have two attacking unit knights with a queen, with a bishop coming in here, and this is gonna get tense here. So he has to change off the knight. Knight takes G4. That makes sense because that's too strong of an attack. Bobby takes it with the pawn. It puts the pawn in front of the pieces to go get the king side. He can use that pawn as a battering ram. It also opens up the H file for a rook. You see how all of that kind of coordinates. That's really nice to see that. And notice what Unzicker does. He says, wait a sec, you know what, that open file's strong. I want to go on the queen side, so I have to challenge that open file. That file would help Unzicker because of his queen and his bishop's placement. His pawns are further advanced, his knight's up here. He could really get a good queen side going pretty quick. And that's why you want to support it with the rook on the open file. That makes good sense. Well, now here comes Bobby. Knight bishop 5. Knight F5, I should say. Yowza. Notice something? What did I just tell you a moment ago? Unzicker put his rook here, and he's directly confronting Fischer on the open file. Does Fischer stop what he's doing to respond to the threat Unzicker gave him? No. He's still playing over here on the king side. He is improving his pieces on the king side every move. He doesn't just stop and say, oh crap, now I got to take care of this threat. No, he's providing stronger threats of his own. This is great chess. And Unzicker has to reply. Again, you know, the knight sacrifice here would absolutely favor Bobby Fischer completely. You can't let him take that G-pawn and break up the king side. Not with your queen sitting here, not with your bishop coming into here, not with the rook able to hop over, not with this bishop. No, no, you've got to take that knight, absolutely. So he does the correct thing, even though it's not what he wanted to do, it's what he had to do. You have to get rid of that knight. And now the queen takes the bishop. And interestingly, there's a question mark here, because it would have been better to take it with the G-pawn. One of the few minor mistakes Bobby Fischer ever got caught in. And bishop now comes to D4. And look at that centralization. Now this is great chess by Unzicker too, because he's got the weakness of the pawn on B2. He's thrusting, he's keeping his tab on F2. His knight's hitting over here on A2 and C2. His queen's right behind the pawns that can come and push, and he's got an open file contested. So Unzicker is saying, well, I'm gonna put the pressure on you too. That is a good annoying move. Unzicker is not by any means out of this game at all with the great Bobby Fischer. So Fischer says, okay, I'll put pressure on you. Okay? And he drops it back. And the comment here is, had Unzicker really wanted to do the queen side, and of course he did, that's not the issue, but it would have been better to swap the rooks. Get rid of the rooks, that would have actually strengthened Unzicker's chance for the queen side. Isn't that interesting? Get rid of all 4 rooks, and then you could probably do a queen side. That's not something you and I would think of as such, and it's something to keep in mind. And now look, Bob Fischer is going hard at the queen side. Notice they're playing both sides of the board. I love how they do that. He can develop and improve his pieces over here on the king side for 3 or 4 moves, and then he moves back over here to the queen side. Unzicker's making a bid at the queen side, so Fischer responds and says, all right, you want to do queen side, let's do queen side. And he plays it so strong. That's wonderful, man. Look, the black knight can't even come back into play. He's eliminated one of the queen side contenders. All he can do is respond by taking it with the a-pawn, right? So he takes it and Fischer takes it. And that changes the entire nature, that pawn swap changes the entire nature of the queenside attack. Isn't that amazing? Bishop comes to b2. He is attempting to put pressure as much as he can on the rook. He's really hoping he can do this. And now Bobby Fischer takes the rook. Bobby says, okay, there's enough here. Whoops, there's enough here that I'm going to exchange the rooks myself. So he does so. And he takes the rook. Now, this gives Unzicker the file for the moment. And now the queen drops back down to f3. They're going to regroup. Now the queen comes up here to b6, keeping the eye on the f2 now, remember. So Unzicker now has the queen file, or the queen bishop file, and Fischer doesn't contest that. He says, let's go to rook d1. And there's a reason why he wants to. And then bishop goes to d4. Now see, Unzicker showed Fischer just isn't going to exchange that bishop. So Unzicker makes his bishop strong. Yes, that's his bad bishop, but he's on the outside of the pawn chain and he's able to exert pressure. That's how to play the bishops, even when they're bad. That's important to understand. Fischer brings up the g3, and now the rook, notice the use of the partial open file. He has the full open file, but he's going to bring it up to here and bear more pressure on the b4 and on the e4 pawn. Indirectly on the e4, but so Unzicker is playing a really excellent game. And the work up the file is really worth noting. Well, now, whoop, no, that's not right. Bishop to d3. He's going to put pressure on that rook. That's excellent defense in a close position. The bishops, true, Unzicker has this file, but the bishops cover all of the crucial squares so that 3/4 of this open file is of no good to that rook. This is how to fight against an open file. He simply takes it away from you. The rook is not safe to operate on this. This is a magnificent, utterly fabulous response by Fischer. There's the only safe square other than c8 for that rook on that entire open file because the pawns and the bishops have closed it down. That's magnificent. This is a great illustration of another way to fight the open file as opposed to just swapping the rook. Fischer wants to keep his rook, but he wants to deny Unzicker the open file. This is fabulous. King g2. Bishop goes to c3. And bishop doesn't want to swap yet. He goes to e3, putting the challenge to the queen, putting pressure on the queen. See, he's trying to get down in here into the king, and Fischer's having none of that. So he backs off the queen to b8. That's an excellent move. And now look at this. Fischer pushed his king up so that, of course, he can come and get that open file on the rook. Of course. Unzicker had this file. Fischer basically made it useless. Fischer takes this file, and this one is very useful. So if you can't contend with the file, go make one of your own. That's fabulous. That is superb chess. Queen has to come to c8. Trying to hit the weak doubled up pawn. The front one is the weak one. So he wants to keep an eye on the king side, but he also gives support for the rook. Bishop can come to here, and then he's got a good attack here down this file. Right? Bishop takes b5. Pow. Yikes. You're going to weaken the queen side, right? Knight takes b4. You're going to continue attacking the queen side. It's changing the entire nature of this game. Queen comes down here to d1. Now, you got to keep track of the queen side. You can see all of Unzicker's power is over there. You've got a lone bishop out here you got to watch yourself with. Queen d1 and then bishop d4. Bishop comes back up here to d4. And finally, Fischer says, okay, now it is time to swap bishops. Because at this point, with things thinning out, Unzicker's central bishop on an outpost there, that's too strong to leave. Take that, baby. Absolutely. But this ruins black. Now that the bishop is gone, black really has no counterplay anymore. This game is close to over. And of course, Fischer, double pawns on the g-file, true, but he's going to push that pawn and be a battering ram. And there's no more queenside threat. Fischer essentially eliminated it. So now it's time to go make your threat on the king side. That's how to do it, man. Queen b8, he's still attempting to put pressure on the queen side, still hoping for a miracle. And does Fischer respond? Now, isn't this fascinating? The guy just moved his queen over here to threaten one of your powers. Look, it's material even. 1, 2, 3 pieces here, 1, 2, 3 pieces there. Material's even. He threatens to take a piece, and Fischer ignores it and comes over here for the attack. That's good chess. Fischer doesn't play reaction chess. He doesn't react to his opponent's threats all the time. He plays his own game. He lost a power. And you say, is that wise? If you and I were down a piece, we would probably lose the game. But Fischer is on the attack. He's down a piece, and he's going to go win this game. Queen takes h7. This is so fun to see this. King, of course, has to go to f8. Queen goes to h8, of course. King comes to e7. So he's chased the king out into the open, and now he takes the g7 pawn. You can see he's going to obliterate the king side, huh? Now the knight does take d5. He has to eliminate this e-pawn from pushing. So he's got to get rid of that central influence, and so he's essentially, in order to ruin the attack possibility, he's willing to sacrifice his knight. Ah, gift from the gods. Now we can retake, right? Right? Watch what Fischer does. He retakes, but he retakes correctly. He's not after material. He comes and takes the pawn. He doesn't care if the material is even. The correct move is get rid of the pawn. That is fabulous chess. The knight comes down here to c3 to threaten the pawn. And the queen comes right back here to f6 check. Power move, isn't it? That's so fabulous. He's going to chase the king away. And then he's going to push his g-pawn, g6. Phenomenal. Knight takes e4, threatening the queen. He's still kind of in the game here. Queen takes f7, check. King c8. He's chased the king all the way across the board. And now, of course, he pushes the pawn g7. And Unzicker resigns. That is one sensational Ruy Lopez to show you how the great Bobby Fischer did things. Just because his opponent made serious threats doesn't mean Bobby stopped doing what he was doing and reacted. No, Bobby kept right on trucking. So there's another Ruy Lopez that I think is highly instructive, excellent to go through several times. Thanks for watching my chess videos, and I will see you in the next video.